I'd like to say welcome to all the viewers. My name is Lukaiso Tsita, and we at Encounters are privileged and excited to be speaking to Dylan Valleys, who's the director of the short South African documentary, Taking Off the Mask, Isaac Sass, the subject of the documentary, and a prison rights activist. And last but not least, we're joined by Doreen from Just Detention International, which is a health and human rights organization that seeks to end sexual abuse in all forms of detentions. A few words about the man behind this documentary, Dylan Valley. He is an award-winning filmmaker and educator who sees film as a tool for social change. His virtual reality documentary, Azibuye, The Occupation, premiered at Sundance Film Festival in 2020. In 2020, he also worked on the selection committee of IDFA's Frontline program. Dylan has directed work for Al Jazeera, Arte, and the South African Broadcasting Corporation. He's also on the editorial board of Africa is a Country and currently a lecturer at the University of Cape Town Center for Film and Media Studies. Before we start with the Q&A, I would like to bring to the attention of our viewers in the form of a trigger warning that from this point onwards, the discussion will deal with themes of rape, sexual assault, and abuse. It's good to have everyone here today. Dylan, I would like to start with you by asking how you became part of this project with Isaac and Just Detention International, and what was the driving factor for you to want to tell it?
Thank you so much, Lukaniso, and thanks also to Encounters for having us as part of the program. It's really an honor to be a part of the selection this year. And the way I got involved with this film was actually Doreen, who's also on the call from Just Detention, reached out to me. If I remember correctly, Doreen, maybe you can correct me, but I think Doreen, who works for Just Detention International, contacted me. I'd made a film before about someone who was imprisoned and leaves prison, and so the film is about reintegration into society and wanting to become a rapper, called Incarcerated Knowledge. And so I had some of the themes in this film, and so we workshopped the idea together. We all came together. The producer, Kurt Orderson, came to Joburg. We were all living in Joburg at the time. Isaac came up, who's the protagonist of the film. The film is about, came up, and we all sat together in a conference room, and I think it was for 2 days or something like that. And we had a really good workshop process. We workshopped the idea of the film together and just kind of got more familiar with each other's work. And from there, the film was kind of conceived and came together. And so, yeah, so that was the beginning of the film.
And, with such a story, there's so much to be unpacked, from the human rights, a failed justice system, inequality of individuals. In your brainstorming sessions, how did you guys decide which approach would be best to ground this documentary in telling, firstly, Isaac's story, but also, most importantly, to get across the most important parts of the story and the message?
I think it was very much collaborative in terms of us collectively deciding through a lot of discussions. It was through also having Isaac, who's also on the call with us today, to really help guide us as well. So it wasn't so much of an idea of like the filmmakers know best, but it was also about really listening to the experts in terms of people who deal with this kind of these kinds of stories in the day-to-day, and the very sensitive material, and so through the deep listening processes, I think we were able to make these kinds of decisions together. And also during the filmmaking process, it was also we were all on the same page. It felt like and Doreen also, correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like it was just kind of we were all holding the space together, and so I always felt supported, and I never felt I was making any of these kinds of decisions alone in terms of what parts of the narrative to place above others. But I know it was also very important upfront for us, thinking back for myself, particularly to kind of contextualize a lot of like these issues with a longer South African history, and not just looking at a community that's facing issues kind of in a vacuum, but kind of trying to paint a longer history. So in the film, we'll talk about colonialism and exploitation, and even though it might not seem directly linked to Isaac's particular story, it's actually all connected, and there's a reason why communities face such difficult circumstances. It's because we come from a long history of subjugation, exploitation, oppression, and so we wanted to also place that. While the film is not about that, we wanted to paint that context as well. So I think that was also quite important for me personally in making this film.
Okay, that's interesting. You mentioned how you had to kind of have to handle with care the sensitivity of the topic, and I'm sure as a filmmaker who's about social change, how do you ensure that you are like, how different was it compared to your other films doing this documentary, in terms of handling the story with sensitivity and making sure that you portray it as best as possible?
So I think every film is different, and I have always experienced that. Like every time you make a film, it's different. And I think what's different here is that we were working very much under the banner of Just Detention. So we were. I think it was great because we had this kind of guidance in terms of and this like long history of work that Just Detention has done, and these resources in terms of understanding like the issues of sexual violence in prisons, understanding like the ways in which this impacts people and also society. And so I think it was different in that way, in that we had, because Doreen was in a sense the producer of the film, but she wasn't just a producer in the sense of let's make the film happen, this is how we're going to make it happen, but it was like the actual the ideological underpinning of the film and the kind of emotional, also just that emotional support. I think we also all felt emotional support, and Doreen was really great in having us feel emotionally supported, because at times it was difficult, because it's difficult to tell these stories. I think through Isaac will touch on this. It's also difficult for people to relay these stories, and for us as a crew and not having that experience to really connect in a meaningful way and not just extract the story. And so we wanted that exchange to be genuine and real, and not just like, tell us your story, okay, great, we got it, now we're going to make a film, but more just like a more meaningful interaction.
Isaac, I'd like to focus on you for a bit, by starting off by kind of wanting to understand, how did you, when did you in your journey meet Doreen and Just Detention International?
Well, I met Doreen in Just Detention the time I was like coming out of prison, start working, and I see a lawyer to lay a charge against correctional services, so that they can because they was responsible for what have happened with me. So I did go and see a lawyer. So I met a lawyer in Cape Town, and this lawyer introduced me to Sasagia that have write a report for him about prison rape and how victims feel when they were raped and stuff.
Okay, and you know, with a story like this, one thing for me that came to mind that I guess if I could, and I have the opportunity now to ask you, is, you know, you express for years how you constantly ask for assistance, and there didn't seem to be an appetite or anyone who wanted to, from the authorities who wanted to assist you, or from anyone else really who was in charge with the safekeeping of the prisoners. So where did you get the courage and the strength to keep moving forward whilst inside?
I think for me, it was like, I know that at the end of the day, I will come out of prison and somebody will hear me and listen to me. And there will be help for me outside, even though I haven't get the necessary support or help from the authorities inside prison or even at court and stuff. So I think in a way, for me, it was like, at the end of the day, I have to move on inside prison, because at the end of the day, I just feel like I will get out and somebody will hear my story, because nobody, they put a blind eye and a deaf ear, and they don't want to help me or listen to me.
Okay, and you know, it's kind of, you know, one of the saddest parts of watching this documentary for me was the feeling of not being heard, you know, especially when you've gained the courage to kind of speak up. So Isaac, I commend you for that, and for pushing forward. But Doreen, I just want to ask, in your opinion, where is the justice system falling short in addressing the issue of rape culture in prison?
So, I mean, for us, I think the main thing that we found was the greatest failure from, you know, just the system entirely was the long history, like the government denied the existence of sexual abuse in its facilities for a very, very long time. And it was in 2004 when a few corrections officials at Pollsmoor Prison decided that something needed to be done, and they decided to conduct a Google search and found Just Detention International, based in the US, our founding organization based in the US, and reached out to them asking for assistance or help on how best to deal with the issue of sexual abuse that was taking place in Pollsmoor Prison, and there was like high levels of it. And so Just Detention International, you know, started coming, like, you know, working in South Africa, visiting South Africa quite frequently and engaging more with civil society organizations and even the Department of Correctional Services to firstly try and get them to acknowledge that the issue is an issue in South Africa's prisons, and that it is something that can be prevented if government puts in place the necessary tools and systems in order for it to be addressed. So that is one aspect of it. The other aspect is, you know, the broader criminal legal system is also quite heavily punitive and relies on carcerality and custodial sentencing for you know, criminal offenses, many of which are actually minor or petty offenses. And you find a lot of people come from marginalized communities, poor people, Black and brown people, you know, being the ones who are more likely to wind up in prison or in police detention or police holding. And a lot of people are awaiting trial. Almost 30% of the people in the correctional facilities in the country are people who haven't even been tried and found guilty. So there's a lot of issues that compound and create this problem, or exacerbate the problem in the country. And it's not just something that is limited or, you know, exclusively taking place in DCS facilities, but it starts in other, you know, parts of the chain of the criminal legal system.
And what has you know, since coming into South Africa, or since starting Justice International in South Africa, what has been your relationship with correctional services and the Justice Department in addressing the issue of rape culture? Has there been a growing appetite? Have you guys been able to work together, or is there still a pushback?
Well, I mean, the relationship has shifted and improved quite significantly from 2004. But there's also, it's like, you know, any partnership and collaboration between, you know, the civil society and government, there will be some kind of, you know, challenges in that work, but we have worked and collaborated with the department since then. So part of it was actually working with Department of Correctional Services to develop the policy to address sexual abuse. It was a long process, and we're working with other civil society organizations, including the Center for you know, Violence and CSVR, sorry, and Solid Gender Justice, and other civil society organizations to help DCS draft the policy and to actually push the policy through in Parliament. It was eventually adopted in 2013. So part of our work has also been now to try and assist the department to implement the policy, which is also taking quite a long time. So as an organization that considers itself, like I said, the helpful advocate, we work to hold government accountable for sexual abuse in detention, but we also try to help build this capacity. And in so doing, we have designed a training program for DCS officials, as well as spiritual care workers that work in prisons on the issue. So, you know, building their capacity on how to prevent, detect, respond, and report on sexual abuse in prisons. It's still a challenge precisely because, I mean, you know, there are hundreds and thousands of people in South Africa's prisons, like about 150,000. And there's over 200 prisons in the country. So we're a small organization, and trying to reach all of those facilities has been a slow movement, and where we're trying now to get DCS to actually mainstream this training in its training of officials right at the start and right at the jump to become a core training. But in 2017, the department did recognize the training we've been conducting in its facilities across the country as a priority training. So that has also been helpful. And we've managed to reach over 400 officials in the last couple of years and training them and building their capacity, but a lot more work still needs to be done. We also kind of work again with, like I said, holding government accountable. So that also involves monitoring the implementation to ensure that once the training is done, has there you know, been an uptake of implementation where officials themselves internalize and take ownership of this policy, because ultimately it is a DCS policy, it's not a JDISA policy, and that they start implementing it and they start being advocates themselves with regards to addressing sexual abuse in their facilities. And we also, you know, so part of this monitoring is also done in collaboration with other civil society organizations, as well as the oversight institutions in the country, independent oversight institutions, which include the Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services, as well as, you know, Parliament itself. So that's also some of the ways in which we have worked and are continuing to try and work with the department in making sure that this doesn't happen for much longer.
Okay, I commend you for the work you guys do. I think it's important, and you know, from a personal perspective, it's from seeing stories like this that I myself am more educated on the seriousness of the matter. Isaac, maybe as a closing question for you, from seeing this documentary, what role would you like the larger society to play in helping address the issue of rape in prison?
I think in a way for society, it's like when a person go to prison, what society think that the person is a criminal, he must rot in prison. They have that attitude that prisoners must die because they've committed a crime. But actually, I think in a way they must change their mindset of rape is a rape. if it's outside or inside prison, and they must see that as also as a criminal offense, even if it's in prison, not even outside. And also, like, if men being raped, you see that mostly they talk about women that being raped, but also make people aware of males that have been raped inside prison or outside. I think they must also have an awareness of male rape, so that people can more understand clearly how it also affects males, even though it affects women being raped, it also affects men.
Okay, and Dylan, from a perspective of in rapping, from a perspective of an individual, you know, because it's kind of hard to separate yourself from your work, especially when you spend so much time with it. How has this story impacted you?
It's impacted me in a very big way, in a very meaningful way, and it's really the strength of Isaac's story, but also his resilience, as most impacted me in terms of also being able to do work that can really change people's lives, and to use your own pain and struggles to inspire others and to push for change so that other people don't have to go through the same pain that you went through. I think that is really meaningful, instead of hiding it and holding on to it and feeling ashamed of things that we've experienced as painful. And I think that's why Isaac's metaphor of taking off the mask is so beautiful, and that's why we used it as the title of the film. It's you know, it's like really like, you know, by telling your story, you're taking off the mask, and I think that we need to do that, but not taking off the COVID mask, by the way. That is something we should keep on. So we obviously that the title came before we were all wearing masks to keep each other safe. Not the literal cloth mask that we're wearing these days.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so I just want to also use the opportunity now to say thank you so much to Isaac for allowing us to tell your story, and for being so inspiring, and for being so brave. It really has made an impact on me, and I know through sharing the film with others, it's going to have an impact on others' lives too. So thank you so much for that, Isaac.
Thank you, Dylan.
And on that note, I'd like to, on behalf of Encounters, I'd also like to say thank you to all of you for taking the time to speak to us. Isaac, again, reiterating what Dylan said, for telling your story and shedding light on an issue many people cannot speak about. Just Detention International, for the work that you do in providing a platform for the advocacy of prisoners' rights. And Dylan, for using your talent and tools to that you have at your disposal to make this documentary, and for telling stories that drive social change. And for all of you, we wish you all the best for the future. Just International, or Doreen, should I say, for those who would like to follow or be involved with the work that you do at Just International Detention, where can they get in touch with you?
So we are on Twitter, and our Twitter handle is Just Detention South Africa. So it's at Just Detention South Africa SA. And then we also have our website, which is www.justdetention South Africa. So you can also just, look for us there.
And Dylan, being a filmmaker, I'm sure you need all the support you can get. I understand myself how it feels like being a filmmaker. Where can people follow your work and keep in touch with what you're doing?
Yes, so you can Google me and just click on all the links that pop up. After you can find me on Instagram, and I have a website, dylanvalley.com, where I just post work that I've done and kind of updates. So if you want to check that out, it's up there.
Okay. Thank you again one last time to everyone, Isaac, Doreen, and Dylan, for being with us today. And last but not least, I'd also like to thank the festival sponsors for the support and the public for joining us. I ask that you as the public continue to engage with us on our social media platforms, which you can connect with through going to our website, encounters.co.za. And that is us. That is it from me, the team of Encounters, and as well from the people behind the taking off the mosque.